The itsy bitsy spider went up the water spout. For some reason, tribal spiders is now a thing, as this legendary spider will be making a big splash in EDH. Ishkana Graft Willow may just seem like a green creature on the surface, but in EDH this will be featured in black and green EDH decks, because that ability takes a black mana to activate. I hope you like playing tribal spiders, because that ability is going to function so well with a bunch of spiders. Personally, one of my favorite green cards in this set is Splendid Reclamation. I feel like if used correctly, this could fit well in some sort of dredgy deck with a lot of lands. Personally, I feel like it's also really good with something like Valakut the Molten Pinnacle, if you can somehow find a way to get a bunch of lands in your graveyard and then barf them all back out onto the battlefield and do a lot of damage. You're of course going to need a lot of mountains with Valakut, but still, I really like this card, and I feel like it can be used for something in several different formats. It's definitely something I'm going to be bringing with. You can feel free to do the same. I just think it's really awesome. Permeating Mass might as well be called I Make Everything Boring, because that's essentially what it does. It turns your opponent's exciting creatures into copies of Permeating Mass. I mean, it's a freaking plague on a creature that turns everybody into, well, something really boring. Or, I guess you could say, a Permeating Mass. Another card I'm interested to try to brew with is Eldritch Evolution. This is a really sweet tutor card that seems like it could have a place in Modern by just allowing you to fetch several different combo pieces. It's essentially a one-of use of a birthing pod in a sense, because it allows you to fetch for just about any creature if you have a creature with a high enough CMC. The sucky thing about this card is that it exiles itself, and I can kind of see why you might want to be cautious about exiling it, because it is a very powerful effect. Another big difference between this card and Birthing Pod is it is a spell and it's not an ability, so it can be countered. Although Birthing Pod could be countered if you countered it upon casting, you couldn't counter the Birthing Pod's ability with a counter spell. This thing you can use a counter spell to counter, but I feel like we'll see some play. I think people are going to try to build decks with this card, and I think this is a really powerful card in general. Definitely get some if you can. It's definitely worth brewing over, especially if you like decks in Modern that run infinite combos and like to provide a lot of value. If you like to play cards that love to reanimate themselves, Emrakul's Evangel may be the card for you. By sacrificing a bunch of creatures with Persist, or can reanimate themselves, or Undying, or something similar, you can get a ton of value and, well, a lot of creatures back. It seems more of like a casual card than anything, but don't entirely put it in that corner just yet. I think it's worth brewing, and there's definitely some cards in Modern that I feel could very well benefit from this. After all, it can be fetched off a collected company, so you never know. It could probably end the game very quickly if you have a bunch of little creatures that seem kind of powerless, and then all of a sudden you use it to turn them all into 3/2 Eldrazi's. It seems like an interesting card to experiment with. For all you wolf lovers, we have the Spirit of the Hunt, who is here to give your wolves and werewolves a big toughness boost at instant speed. Still, a 3/3 for 3 is never a bad deal, and especially with Flash and giving all your creatures a nice combat trick to fool your opponent, it definitely could see some play. Although wolves and werewolves are not very, I guess you could say, a competitive deck in Standard at the moment, I think it can be kind of a neat trick to use. It may see some play here and there as a one-of in some decks, just because it's a nice little trap against some matchups, like the fair matchups where you're trying to just attack and want to trade blows via combat damage. But it's nothing too out of the ordinary or overpowered in general. For those of you who don't remember, Hamlet Captain is actually a reprint from the original Innistrad set. Since humans are becoming kind of a thing in Standard at the moment, I think this thing will definitely be a stellar card. Especially while Collected Company is still in Standard. Narwhal Dryad, while not a Wild Nacatl, does seem like it's a pretty solid card, and if you can somehow get Delirium, it does meet that same power level as in the Wild Nacatl, although it will take a lot longer than a Wild Nacatl to get that power. To make up for this, it does have Death Touch, which does trade with damn near everything, and that is something Wild Nacatl does not have. That being said, I feel like it is a very playable card, and I think it should be experimented with a little bit. It probably won't be replacing your Nakados in your Zoo deck, but I think it's definitely worth trying. Up next, we have some decent ramp cards that, oddly enough, cost 2 mana. The first one of these is the Primal Druid, which kind of acts like a big, bulky Viridian Emissary. You might seem debatable which card is better, but honestly, I kind of feel like Primal Druid is a little bit better just because you can block with it more efficiently. It doesn't have any power, but even if you can't get it off the table and get its ability to activate, you can still bide a lot of time with it blocking, and you're essentially getting more time either way. Or if you do get it off the table, you'll get some land to cast into your bigger spells, but if you don't get to ramp, you basically are given the extra turn to bide that time you need to cast your extra spells either way. Wolvenwald Captive is our other ramp creature, and he's basically just a little mana battery that provides 1 green mana while being a 1/2 defender. What's even better is he transforms into a nice Eldrazi werewolf with a soul ring attached to it. I mean, that's just swell. Rounding out green, we also have Kessig Prowler, which is another nice aggressive creature that could also see some play in Standard and other constructed formats. It does transform into something that's quite a bit bigger, but a 2/1 for 1 is never a bad deal. I mean, we've seen several of the aggressive decks in Standard over the last few years that do a really good job just by leading off with a 2-power creature. I mean, it definitely has potential. Prey Upon is another reprint from the original Innistrad, and I actually really like this art because it's actually kind of a parody of the original art from the original Innistrad. Originally, we had a human fighting a werewolf, and now we have this werewolf fighting an Eldrazi werewolf. Prey Upon is actually kind of an iconic spell in Magic because it was one of the first cards to actually feature the fight mechanic. It's kind of nice it's returned to the plane of its origin. I also think it's a fine spell for something like green. I'm kind of surprised not a whole lot of green decks use it, because it's a great removal spell, especially if you run big creatures. While it probably won't see any standard play, Foul Emissary is honestly an interesting card that I would have liked to see Wizards explore with the Emerge mechanic, which we haven't talked about at all until now in my set review. But I feel like there should have been a lot more cards that function like this, and I'm kind of sad that they kind of put it off. Maybe in Time Spiral 2? You know, in 2011, I made a wish that there would never be any more gimmicky mechanics in Magic the Gathering. But then all of a sudden, my dreams were shattered, and we got Meld, which was kind of silly because there are only really 3 creatures that can be formed from the Meld ability, and it kind of made me, well, maybe a little bit unhappy. I'll just say that much. Another thing I made a wish for was that I wanted Wild Mongrel to return. I mean, after all, it's one of the most popular cards from the Odyssey block, or at least it was back when Standard was around, and it really showed the real strength of Madness and all the other really, really great things that it can do and how well it could work, and it had a really powerful creature to back it up too. It was terrific. It was really hard to stop it. And, you know, it's really sad because the strength and power of cards has really changed, and there's all these new mechanics and new card types nowadays. And just think how wonderful it would be to have a Wild Mongrel in Standard or Wild Mongrel in Modern. How cool would that be? I mean, we did get this snake here, which is... Wait, what? This snake? Oh my goodness. It's a better Wild Mongrel! It's a better Wild Mongrel! It's a better Wild Mongrel!